So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, joined by Birmingham City fan Joshua Clarke. And Josh, welcome back to the show. And of course, Birmingham City, it's been eventful recently. Only one win in the last 10 games. A lot of obviously complaints about the owners, and obviously yesterday a 2-0 lead against Derby, and it ended up in a 2-2 draw. What have you made of the situation recently?
It's been hard. It's been hard for the fans. I think we've come to the end of our tether. I think a lot of it centred around some of the stuff that Daniel Ivory has been putting out. And I think we've just come to the end of the road with these owners. They're faceless. They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a track record within it. And then add that the team isn't performing to the level it should be. A lot of players are coasting in the team that have been there for a long time. I think Bowyer's tactics aren't really helping the fans to believe. I feel like he's trying to reinvent the wheel at times when really the squad shows it should be set up really with a flat four, two holding mids, an attacking midfielder, two wingers and a striker. Yet somehow we've developed this kind of diamond in the midfield with two up front, and sometimes it works. I mean, it worked for 80 minutes on Sunday, but it didn't work against Peterborough, and we're struggling. We're struggling at boardroom level. We're struggling with the fans, and the protests are only going to get stronger.
Yeah, I mean, also, you're a big fan of Bowyer, Josh, and you were since he's come in, obviously not far off a year now in the job, and obviously this time last year you've had very strong thoughts against Ita Karanka. With Bowyer, though, do you feel like, it's not all his fault what's going on at the club, or do you feel like what's going on the pitch really is also down to maybe Bowyer's tactics at times?
I think he's not been helped by the team, and I think the reasons why some of his tactics have been the way they are because he hasn't got much else. And I can be completely Bowyer in, but also criticise that his tactics don't make sense. And it's not the case of Bowyer can be above reprieve because he's not been spending money. Every manager we seem to have, even as far back as Gary Monk, there's times where fans can't understand why they do certain things. Now, with Monk in it, for example, it was probably bringing subs on a bit too slow, but that's okay. You can kind of let that go. With Bowyer, it's quite random the way his tactics can be. I mean, the game against Peterborough, we kind of had like three wingers on one side and no one was on the right. And we're all saying the same sort of thing, but it's every single time, every single season. The people in charge can never do that. And when he brings up comments like, every fan's perfect or, they all want to say their way. Well, if we're all saying the same sort of thing, then you've got to start listening maybe. You're thinking too much into it and trying to reinvent the wheel. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we can do much better than Bowyer, and I don't want to keep on sacking managers. And I also feel like until he gets his feet under the table, in the sense of the squad is his squad, then I think he needs to be given more rope, really. But also, when we can see it's glaringly obvious that a certain system doesn't work, to keep on persevering with it time after time, and then suddenly realise it doesn't work, it's just infuriating. It's just get there quicker, get to a settled system, and let's see what we can do from there.
Yeah, and obviously, with the fact you are 12 points above the relegation zone, that, of course, in itself is a positive. Do you feel like mid-table, maybe a top half of the end of the season, is the maximum Birmingham will achieve this season?
It goes from week to week. I mean, some of the games you've had recently have been that bad that we could be brought down into the relegation fight. There is players that are due to come back. We don't know if anyone's going to come in again today. There could be. There's murmurings on Twitter. There could be some people coming in. But I think as long as we're not in a relegation fight towards the end of the season, then that's a positive because we've not really spent any money. We can't keep on doing what we've doing, bargain basement and loans, and expecting a miraculous turnaround. The downside we've got is the fans have completely turned on the ownership, and that's not going to suddenly stop. I've heard comments like we could sign 10, 12 players at £5 million each, £10 million each, it wouldn't change anything. The apathy towards the owners now has gone to a level where until they leave, we don't see a positive future, Bowyer or not. So I think a lot of the emphasis now on the fans is to continue with the protest, continue pushing the club to acknowledge their failings, and actually, you can't go any further with this. It's gone as far as it can go. Do the honourable thing and sell up.
Yeah, obviously, Lyle Taylor arrived on loan, I believe, from Nottingham Forest, scored in his debut on Sunday. A good, of course, thing for him and for the Birmingham fans. What do you make of that loan signing?
To start with, I wasn't a big fan of it. I thought he's 31. It doesn't add up to what Bowyer and Craig have kind of alluded to in their blueprint for the squad. But I'll give him his credit. He moves a lot better than I thought he would for 31. And he's got something different that we haven't got. So, I'm not going to say that fans are fickle, but you score on your debut with your first touch and you play the way he played. If Bowyer does want to play this kind of a weird, diamond suddenly turn into a front three, he's a lot more mobile than I thought he would be. So I am pleasantly surprised, but he had taken into isolation that it's Derby. They're not the best team in the league. So it could be a flash in the pan. I hope it's not. But yeah, I'm a lot more pleased that he's more mobile than I thought he would. So yeah, it could be a very good, shrewd loan signing.
Yeah, looking at your run of games now, though, Josh, obviously Sheffield United, Bournemouth in the next two. Difficult run. Sheffield United obviously aren't really up there. They're more mid-table. Bournemouth, they're away from home. Obviously, when you look at how you got on at Fulham recently, that must be quite a worrying one. What are your thoughts going to the Sheffield United game, which is, of course, on Friday night?
I don't think any fans thinking about the game. They're more interested in the protest that we've got planned. I think the games now are kind of becoming second nature because they're so organised and so determined to make it known that we are so sick of having these conversations. We're having the same conversations every single season, that we've got limited players, we've got players that can't do what they're meant to be doing, we've got players on big money we can't get rid of, and there's just no hope within the squad. There's no hope with the ownership when our chairman puts out a statement that's straight out of a PR brigade for the first time and writing like he only turned up last week. So I think the games are becoming less important. Sheffield United, though, I do think we kind of could get something from that. It's going to be a very hostile home game for us, so maybe that could be enough to galvanise the players. Friday night under the lights, you never know. It could work in our favour. It could go completely opposite way, and the players get worried by it, and they could turn in a poor performance. But yeah, it's got to be better than the Peterborough game, because if not, we will get seriously hurt by Sheffield United.
Yeah, I want to ask as well, just about the relegation battle. Obviously, you're playing against Derby yesterday. You saw their protest before the game. A lot of protesting going on against the EFL, understandably so. With the situation they're in, which three teams are you're saying right now you do think are going to get relegated?
I think the two to go down are Derby, Peterborough. I think they're going to go down because I don't think Dembele is going to start, and I think Barnsley are too far off. I think them three are the ones to go down. I don't think anybody else will get dragged into it, and especially if Derby lose some players today, I think they're going to really struggle. I mean, they've got the gallows fighting them, and they have quality within that squad, but they're going to start getting found out. And we took the foot off the gas. Really, if we kept on pushing, Hogan can finish his dinner. That game's over and done with, and there's no answer to it really. So it is a shame. We should have saw that out. So I don't think Derby are going to pick up many points with the way they play, because I think they're on their legs. But who knows? They've got that fight. So if they can keep hold of some players and keep it ticking over, I think that they could spring a shot over the other two, I think.
Yeah, and also the top end of the table, Fulham look absolutely unstoppable, really. 5 points clear at the top and 6 points clear of the third spot. Do you think Fulham are guaranteed to go up? And if so, who do you think is going to follow them up in second?
I think they're going to win it. I think they're just too good for everybody else, and they're a well-oiled machine, and they're just going to keep on going, getting better and better. I think they'll win it, and I think Bournemouth will turn it on with the players that they're signing. I think it's a brave move for them to go for so many players so late in the window, but I think it's proven that they're willing to roll the dice, and I think that might be enough to push them past Blackburn. I think Blackburn's squad is a little bit smaller. I think the quality of players that they're bringing in will give them enough to springboard them up to second. I can't see them catching Fulham though. I think they will finish second.
Yeah, and also as well, the playoffs anyway. Obviously, a lot of trouble right now with Valerie and Ishmael. Obviously, the fans not too happy with the way West Brom are performing. It looks like he might be going sooner rather than later. Which teams right now are you thinking for that top six anyway to finish just outside the top two?
I think Blackburn will be the top end of that, and I think they'll probably win it with the way they play. They're not relying on many players. I know Diaz is scoring the goals, but it seems like all their players are playing above themselves, so that's always good to have a few players in form. And if Bradley Dack could come back before the end of the season, that's another player that you're not expecting to do a lot. So I am really impressed with Blackburn. They just seem like they're like a Tony Mowbray team of old, where they're just everyone knows their role and they're doing so well. And they're the ones that really impressed me, to be brutally honest. And I think with the Baggies, it's hard for me to feel sorry for them because of my situation with Blues, but I do get when you've got a manager that's trying to play one-dimensional and will not see anything different, a bit like with AK last season. And I think Baggy's mistake was they could see this going wrong in November, December. They should have made the decision then, but I think they've believed him a bit too much and believed that DK coming in could be their answer, and it's just not been. And it seems like their fan base has turned on him. And when it gets to that point, he can't do anything differently now. He can't change the way he is because he's not. He seems like the type of manager that's very blunt in his decision making. So he's not going to suddenly start doing what the fans want to appease them. So I think he's on a lose-lose. And what will be mental from Baggy is if they sack him in the next 2 weeks, because then the next manager comes in, hasn't got a window, can't do anything with the players that they've got. And I think the sign of Andy Carroll kind of tells you they're not really looking for any ambition. It's the cheapest option, and that kind of doesn't work for the way they want to play, especially with Ishmael. And Andy Carroll didn't fit into that Barnsley team of last season. So why would you go for it for a Baggies team, which is aging in comparison to the Barnsley team? So I think he's run his course, and I think it's a poor move from the board by not making a decision quicker.
Yeah, and looking at the Premier League anyway, Josh, briefly, the title race, do you still feel like Man City have got that in the bag, or do you think that Liverpool and possibly even Chelsea, if they did put together a good run to what from now to the end of the season, could possibly pick them to it?
I think City need to do probably 3 games in a row like they did against Southampton, where they just drop points where you're expecting it, and just can't see it happening. I think they're just too well oiled and they're too belligerent with it when it comes to the league. I think you might see Liverpool go further in Champions League. I think that's where they know they can do it. They've dealt with Salah and Mane not being there, and they've signed Diaz, which is a very good signing. I think Liverpool are the only ones that can get close to City, and I think if they can keep it 3-4 points, I think that'll be classed as a good season for Klopp. And I think if they can win the League Cup, maybe the FA Cup, and do well in the Champions League, that's also a good season, because then in the new year they could revamp that squad. You know, how often do you see Liverpool buying in January? It's very rare. So clearly they're looking to regenerate that team. So I think Liverpool are the only closest. I think Chelsea are too far now. You know, they've drawn too many games, and I think they're kind of living on the mindset that the summer is going to be another rebuild. And I wonder if Chelsea might pull the trigger on Tuchel because of it. And it would be mental, but it's not something that's out of the realm of possibility when it comes to Chelsea.
Yeah, and also the Premier League relegation battle. I mean, really, you've got 4 teams down there. Whichever one stays up out of Watford, Newcastle, Burnley and Norwich, you'd imagine that team's going to be quite lucky, really, because all 4 of them in many seasons would be right down there, really, and probably would get relegated come the end of the season. Which 3 are you saying will go down?
I think it's Burnley, Norwich and Watford. I think Newcastle will slowly pour themselves out. I think the deals that they've made have been good. They've not been as good as some would have expected. I think the lad from Lyon is a very good signing. And if that's a mark of what the summer can bring, they'll be in and around the Spurs, Villa, Arsenal level if they can bring in players of that kind of ilk. I think they were expecting more deals than they got, kind of. I think they were expecting to just offer and clubs would accept it. I think it's got to stage because people know how rich they are and they're from such a far back position, unlike City. They've almost got to rebuild a squad in one window, which is never going to happen. So I think the deals that they've made have been smart, and it's helped them and improved them and also weaken people around them. So yeah, I think they'll be all right. And I think Norwich, they're starting to turn it on a little bit, but I think their style of play will cause them more problems than it's worth. The unwillingness to pass the ball and be too direct, I think will catch them against the better teams. I think Watford are done. I think changing the manager to Roy, he's brought nobody in really. I think they're going to really struggle to get any sort of rhythm going. And I think Burnley's bubbles burst from all the other seasons they've got away with it. And I think the signing they've got now, he's good, but he's got no experience in the league, and that could be their downfall. And I think it hinges on him being a really good striker in this division, is if they're going to push it out. And I just can't see it. I don't think there's enough around him to do enough for him as such. I think they could have done with a winger as well to add with what they've already got. So I think they're going to struggle as well. So yeah, I do believe it's going to be Norwich, Watford and Burnley.
Yeah, final question for you, Josh, as well, is about the Champions League. Of course, the knockout stages begin very soon. Who are you saying for the Champions League this year, though? Which teams do you think for you? Which teams do you think are strong enough to win the European Cup?
I think English. I just think the English clubs are just stronger than anybody else. Barca aren't the same as what they used to be, nor Real Madrid or PSG. I just think English clubs, you can't look past any of them because any of them could turn it on for a competitional-based tournament. It wouldn't shock me with an English final. It really wouldn't. I don't think United are there just yet, but you never know with a tournament competition. You know, a one-game knockout kind of mentality. You know, they don't have to worry about form or nothing. So yeah, I think it's an English club. Really, I would like it to be Liverpool because I think they have a affinity with that tournament, and I could see Clarke see that the league is not achievable and potentially resting players in the Prem to give the Champions League a really good go. On the flip side, if Pep did that, I think that could be enough for Liverpool to potentially catch them. But I don't see Pep doing that. I see Pep seeing the Prem as the easy option. Until he can buy a striker that he can rely on, that's when he can do both, which is mental with the amount of money that they spend. But I do think City just lack that killer instinct in a tournament game where you just need someone just to pick it up and just do something and just to pull you out of a potentially losing situation. So yeah, I think if out of all the English clubs, I think Liverpool are the strongest in that tournament. To be fair.
Yeah, and look, one last question to ask: who's your favourite January transfer of this window?
I think it's today. I think it's Nat Phillips to Bournemouth. I think it's an absolutely amazing deal that they've got him in. I thought he would have definitely gone potentially Villa, maybe Newcastle, and to get him into the Championship, I think it's a really good move for them. And I think it's a sign of intent, and it puts a massive pressure on Parker now to not. If he doesn't get them up, he can't demand that sort of level of job anymore because he's been backed handsomely and he has to deliver now. So yeah, I'd say Nat Phillips. Other than that, I can't really think of anyone that's really stood out. I mean, obviously, Coutinho to Villa is noticeable because of the player that he is. But I think the player that left Liverpool is not the player they've got now. But I think, understandably, he's still a very good player. And I think the lad from Lyon to Newcastle is a good move as well. I think he's a very good midfielder that they would never have even spoken to if it weren't for the money. So yeah, but I still think Nat Phillips to Bournemouth is a cracking deal.
Yeah, well, that's all we've got time for seeing anyway, Josh, on STW Sports. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you soon.
Cheers, mate. See you later.